All right, President Trump and Governor Walz had a phone conversation today. They both said it went well. They talked about working together. Walz even saying the president agreed to look into reducing the number of federal agents in that state. It is kind of a 180, given that Trump repeatedly blamed Governor Walz for all of the unrest in Minneapolis.
So after Tim Walz essentially surrendered this week and cut a deal with Trump to finally allow Minnesota police to enforce basic civil order on their streets, after all, major American cities do not belong to violent mobs of radical communists, we are seeing the exact expected outcome, which is that now left-wingers are not happy with him either. In fact, as we currently speak, there is a mob of protesters outside of Tim Walz's office in the Minnesota state capitol, basically demanding that he give back control of the streets to the mob. But after all, who can really feel bad for Walz, because this is the exact bed that he made for himself. Turns out when you play with fire, aka get a mob of radical, mentally ill, crazy people behind you, and you do the slightest thing to piss them off. If you suggest, okay, maybe this is going too far, maybe I should stop encouraging my voters to essentially martyr themselves, maybe there should be a line of police between the so-called crazy trigger-happy ICE agents and the protesters so that way bad things don't happen, then they will come for you as well. And that is the scene that you are currently watching. So it's very interesting because on one hand, do I necessarily trust the Walz administration? Do I think that this agreement with Trump is going to last very long? No, I do not. And especially, right, given the fact that his own voters clearly seem to be upset because, oh, we don't get to be legal observers coming with guns and trying to run over ICE agents anymore. But on the other hand, it's going to be pretty interesting to see, frankly, how this all plays out in the realm of Democratic politics, because for a long time, Walz has been crowned as a fighter. He's a hero. After all, I mean, he's been doing a pretty good job appeasing them so far, right? Basically saying there's no limits to what you can do to protest ICE. But now that is happening, I guess we have to see what it all means going forward. But last night, we did kind of see the results of this brand new agreement, which is, yes, Minneapolis police and Minnesota State Police are finally now protecting buildings, holding back the protesters. As a matter of fact, they made several arrests, which is hence why they're now probably protesting right now outside of Tim Walz's office. But let's bring you this full story here today, right? We'll tell you about the brand new agreement, what it means, why the liberal excuses where Walz is celebrating it, saying we got what we wanted. No, actually, you gave the right wing what we've been asking for this entire time, as well as what it's all meaning in the streets of Minneapolis. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate the support, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of our latest news and coverage. And that said, here was the announcement yesterday that basically says, look, as we've been saying for a very long time, we want the cooperation of local police. Even if they don't want to assist in immigration operations and they want to be liberal, they want to be woke, at the very least, it would make sense, and it should make sense this entire time, right? It should have always been like this, that when it comes to these agitators, these so-called legal observers that are trying to confront and get into fights with ICE, that type of stuff should not even be allowed to happen, because guess what? Local police should at least have the interest of protecting their own streets, protecting their own citizens, and making sure this type of stuff does not happen. But of course, what have we been documenting now for several weeks? Much like 2020, they basically instituted a policy of the so-called protesters are allowed to do whatever they want. And guess what that is, folks? Not safe. So if you want to sit here and complain, oh, well, these ICE agents, these border patrol agents, they're too trigger happy. Maybe the escalation tactics could have been better. You know what? Maybe on a level I agree with it in the sense that, yeah, ICE agents should not have to deal with things like crowd control or the issues of local policing. You know why? Because local police are supposed to be able to handle it, right? So if you want to make the argument, I don't think the ICE agents are being trained in the proper way. I mean, guess what? For the past 20, 30 years, their job has been immigration enforcement. That's what they mainly learn how to do. If you have such a problem with it, then yes, I actually agree, right? Immigration officers should not be forced to do the job of local police. But guess what happens when the local police say, okay, violent, crazy leftists trying to kill people and hurt people, have your way, and they run right at the ICE agents and there's nothing to separate them, then this is what we get. Right? So the entire time, what has the Trump administration been asking for? What have conservatives been asking for? the cooperation of Minneapolis police, at the very least, to hold this stuff back. You know how the Renee Good situation would not have happened? You know how the situation with the nurse more recently would not have happened? If Minneapolis police separated the two entities so that way, yes, crazy leftists do not have the opportunity, physically speaking, to go and get themselves into these dangerous situations. Yeah, seems like a pretty basic point of public safety. And it turns out now, finally, Tim Walz, for whatever reason, just had an epiphany. Oh, that actually makes sense. It made sense the entire time, right? But anyways, here's what Trump said yesterday. Governor Tim Walz called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. Very interesting. I thought thus far his policy has just been to, allow liberals to run up to ICE and do all this stuff. But I don't know, maybe he's realizing it's going too far, or to an extent, it's just like there's too much heat on him. No idea. But here's what apparently went down. It was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Tom Homan call him, and that what we are looking for are any and all criminals that they have in their possession. This is basically referring to the fact that as we speak, it's been the policy specifically of county jails in Minnesota that when they arrest an illegal alien, even for pretty heinous crimes, they do not honor ICE detainers. Basically, they will not turn them over to the federal government for deportation. They instead release them back onto the streets, oftentimes using very liberal bail reform policies. So let me reiterate, it's not a conspiracy theory. Democrats actually do support the worst of the worst. The sanctuary city policy is intended to protect the worst of the worst from the federal government. Because after all, what is that all about, right? We won't cooperate with immigration law in any way, which even means yes. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is true. When Minnesota County Police, or, they end up in the county jail and it's an illegal alien, they will not notify the federal government. So just keep that in mind, by the way, when you hear all of this rhetoric, because Democrats are now trying to do a 180 pivot on immigration where they're like, look, we actually support deporting criminals. We support deporting the worst of the worst. But why are you doing the rest of this stuff? Actually, no, they don't, right? We know that because for the past 4 years, not only do they allow the worst of the worst into their country, but right now, as we speak, they're very criminal justice reform policies and sanctuary city policies actually are intentionally designed to protect the worst of the worst from the federal government. Yes, that includes those who get arrested. Yes, that includes those who end up in jails. So anyways, the governor very respectfully understood that, and I will be speaking to him in the near future. So it does sound like suddenly now Minnesota has decided, we do want to turn over the worst of the worst. He was happy that Tom Homan was going to Minnesota, and so am I. We have had such tremendous success in Washington, D.C., Memphis, Tennessee, and New Orleans. And virtually every other place that we have touched, even in Minnesota, crime is way down, but both Governor Walz and I want to make it better. President Donald J. Trump, and apparently as part of this new agreement, ladies and gentlemen, the governor of Minnesota has finally agreed to also use Minnesota police to enforce civil order. Take a listen.
President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota. Number one, Governor Walz, Mayor Frey, and all Democrat leaders should turn over all criminal illegal aliens currently incarcerated in their prisons and jails to federal authorities, along with any illegal aliens with active warrants or known criminal histories for immediate deportation. Number two, state and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens who are arrested by local police. And then thirdly, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes, especially violent crimes. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement can peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions. Additionally, President Trump is calling on the United States Congress to immediately pass legislation ending sanctuary cities once and for all. American cities should be safe sanctuaries for law-abiding citizens only, not for dangerous illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws and do not belong here.
Now, I'll point out that the Walz administration is basically celebrating this deal as a victory because they're saying, hey, look, Border Patrol is leaving Minnesota. Greg Bovino's out of the state. This is such a big deal. But I once again repeat, the very reason they were there to begin with is because why? The local government refused to do its own job. So yes, when ICE has to do the job of local police as well, and handle crowd control and handle protesters and all this different stuff, then obviously you're going to be needing more manpower. Let me let the Democrats in on a little secret. You know, ICE has been conducting operations and deportations in red states as well. They're not just exclusively targeting the blue states, but you want to know the major difference? You know why you never hear about it? You know why it's not such in your face? Because we don't need to be doing these big dramatic operations. Why? The local government cooperates, and we don't have these sinister networks of basically left-wing domestic terrorists constantly trying to chase them around. And by the way, that's as it should be, right? I would very much like ICE to be sort of like the FBI, right? Like an agency that operates sort of covertly, sort of subtly. It's there doing its job, but you don't need to be seeing or dealing with it every day. You don't need to be dealing with protesters blocking the streets every day. But guess what that takes, right? It takes two to tango. It takes the cooperation of the local government to actually allow the federal government to do its job in enforcing federal and national law. This is extremely simple, guys, okay? And look, let me say again, I know left-wingers believe that we have some type of fascist power fantasy about, rolling up with troops, rolling up with, all these armed agents in major cities. But in reality, folks, no, we don't want to have to do that. Right? We don't want to have to be spending more time than we need in these cities because, frankly, guys, if we had the cooperation of Minneapolis police and there weren't so many domestic terrorists basically trying to impede the operations on a daily basis, the ICE operation in Minnesota right now may already be over, right? And we want that, actually, because we want this to be as efficient and as smooth as possible. The mass deportations. Every second we waste, every second that ICE agents waste, right? In Minnesota, fighting back crowds or trying to deal with these agitators is a second that they're not spending on their actual job, which is deporting illegal aliens. That's what we want them to do. We would very much appreciate the cooperation of local governments, but obviously when you refuse to do so, and by the way, let me just say that I think when you'll see the evidence, it's very clear. The Walz government and the Jacob Frey government wanted this to happen, wanted it to go this way. Then, that's exactly what you get. But anyways, now we are seeing these signs, at least for now, right? Again, I'll repeat, I don't know how long the Democrats are actually going to stick to their word. If I were Trump, I would have Border Patrol on standby, right? Don't have them leave the state. Just have them sit in the office and, be watching live security cameras the entire time. But at least last night, you finally saw the activation after how many weeks now, right? Showing you again, this could have been done the entire time. But anyways, the activation of the Minnesota State Patrol. And here they are holding back protesters, finally protecting the hotels that, we've seen these leftists try to storm into and break into a million different times. And even, I know this is very shocking. I can't believe this too, right? Making arrests of violent leftists. Check it out.
You are now under arrest. Please sit down and wait for instruction.
I'm at level 12 news.
I can't hear you.
I'm at level 12 news. BG on the scene. I'm just pressed.
You don't have any press credentials?
I don't. I can show you.
All right, why don't you move out there, okay?
Oh.
Just get out there. Stay outside the line, okay? Coming out. Coming out.
Here you see them too, by the way, actually protecting this hotel that the protesters think ICE and Border Patrol are staying in. Finally, right? They didn't show up 4 hours after the fact and send about 2 police officers. Oh, what is that? They're making a police line. Again, you mean to tell me this could have been done all along? That's very interesting. You mean to tell me we would not have to have the federal armed masked men? By the way, these guys are wearing masks too. That's very interesting. But anyways, the so-called Gestapo wouldn't need to be going out there and handling what U.S. citizens are doing if, again, local and state police did that job. Wow. Very interesting how that works. Oh, look at that. Look at that. It turns out the protesters can't storm the hotel when you actually have a riot squad out there to deal with them. They're carrying sticks They're armed? Hey, Tim Walz, isn't this fascism? Oh, suddenly now they're doing it. Turns out Tim Walz has his own masked men, huh? It's interesting. Turns out they could have been used the entire time. Oh, and what do you know? Here they are, actually arresting people. Can you believe it? Now, granted, it's Minneapolis, so we're probably about to see them get let out of jail in approximately 2 seconds here. But hey, I mean, I guess you got to start somewhere, right? And again, how long is this going to last? We have no idea. But at least maybe in an attempt to try to calm things down. Oh, turns out you could have used your own police, I should say. Yeah, this entire time. But of course, before we celebrate too hard, it's very necessary to ask this question. If this was possible the whole time, and it really was this easy, then it does beg the question as to why Tim Walz wasn't doing this. I mean, from the very moment that protesting erupted, you should have had the police step in and make sure everything was safe. But especially as you saw increasingly violent behavior, you saw more and more riots. Why did it take several weeks to finally get the response that you should have always had? And it turns out, by the way, Minnesota always had the resources to get this done. We heard some state officials pretend as if, oh, you know, we've lost control of the streets. Yeah, you kind of did, I guess, in a sense, because you're not sending enough people. You know, when you use one police officer to try to guard a hotel that 300 people are trying to storm in, yeah, I mean, in that sense, you're going to lose control because your strategy, what you're doing is actually really stupid. So again, if they could do this, then why didn't they? The answer is very obvious, because what you saw happening in the streets was exactly what they wanted to happen. They wanted the violence to go down, right? For political ops, midterms, or, you know, whatever, just insurrection against the federal government, right? That was all coordinated. That was their intention. There was a reason why after Renee Good, after many different incidents that went down with ICE, right? Instead of saying, hey, maybe we should relax. Hey, you know, be safe. Stop getting in the face of federal law enforcement. You saw Tim Walz and Jacob Frey continue to encourage the behavior, right? Keep on documenting it. Keep on getting in their face. We have to cause trouble, right? And as I pointed out, basically sending their own voters to go be in danger, right? Because these are the same people who claim ICE is shooting U.S. citizens for absolutely no reason. They're murdering people. So please, go up to the murderers and try to provoke them, right? Is what they were telling their freaking voters. It was all part of the point, which is why, even with this brand new agreement, clearly, right, the Minnesota Democrats are not clear of accountability. Oh, you know, we're all getting along now. No, I don't buy it for a second. I mean, like, granted, they're doing what they should have done the whole time. I'm not going to oppose it. At the same time, we cannot forget, nor can we, at this point, even forgive what we just saw basically go down the entire time, okay? They basically wanted to try to get their own voters in danger, and in some cases even blanked, you know what I mean? For the purpose of, I don't know, having some images for the midterms, for conducting a political stunt. And then at the end of the day, ultimately, what are they really doing, right? Protecting their voter base in Minnesota and these blue states, because if you deport illegal aliens, what happens to their power in congressional apportionment? We talked about that recently. It goes down drastically because this is how Democrats basically fake and manufacture their actual political power in this country. And so essentially what you watched, right, is in order to desperately hold on to political power, to try to get the midterms, to try to have Tim Walz have his attention shifted away from something else that's not him enabling Somali fraud, et cetera, maintain the congressional seats. In order to achieve all of that, they were willing to, first of all, engage in violence and endanger their own voters' very lives, right? In order to, create a situation that never had to happen the entire time. So just don't forget about that. Now, that said, the voters, I don't think, are any more sane than the politicians, because as I hinted at in the intro, now you currently see the scene of protest. There's no longer just outside DHS or federal facilities, but now outside of Governor Tim Walz's office after he signaled an openness to working with Trump, Tom Homan, and the administration. Check it out.
Justice denied! Justice delayed! Justice denied! Justice delayed! Justice denied! Justice delayed! Justice denied!
Yeah, well, certainly none of this is surprising. I mean, I think we knew the moment that we heard that announcement that the No Kings crowd would now be after Tim Walz and Minnesota Democrats as well. But I would just like to close by pointing out, this is the very problem that the Democrat Party faces. You wonder why there's no actual return to normalcy. There's a lot of talk about introspection after the 2024 election. Look, maybe we have to moderate more as a party. Maybe we lost our way. We have to be more sane, less woke, less crazy. And yet, every time, whether that's Chuck Schumer or now in this case Tim Walz, every time they try to kind of move toward the center, maybe do something that is just not completely insane, whether it's, hey, let's not shut down the government or let's not allow the mob to run the streets in our own state, in our own city, right? That this is the response you get. This is why, again, you will never see Democrat politicians actually move to the center or actually become more normal in the short term. Perhaps even deep down, they understand and believe that, look, maybe our politics are not super winning right now because of how crazy we are. But look, they're terrified of these people, right? These protesters right here who want Democrat politicians to take the 100% most maximalist, crazy political stances that they can are ultimately the ones with the power. They're the ones that the Democrat politicians frankly fear. And anytime that a Democrat politician tries to make that move, they're going to be immediately pulled back to the far left because, ladies and gentlemen, these are the Democrat voters. And Democrat politicians understand they cannot, for their own sake, right, abandon their own base of voters. So, just keep that in mind. The next time that, maybe some Democrat candidate in 26 or 28 tries to say, look, I've moved to the center, I've changed. No, you haven't. Because even if that's how you feel in your heart of hearts, we've seen time and time again, ultimately, Democrat politicians always cave to their own voters. They always give them exactly what they want. And that's frankly why, me personally, I have a hard time trusting the new agreement with the federal government. Because Walz can sit here now and say, oh, well, maybe it makes sense. Maybe we should, stop the chaos on our streets. Maybe I should actually mean what I say about, we don't want this to be happening. But if your voters show up and keep on protesting you, what does that mean? What's that? What consequences is that going to have? I don't know. That said, let me know your thoughts, guys. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.